Hi, everybody. If you weren't in the last session, my name is Rich Cogliano. I am the Planning Section Chief at Vermont Emergency Management. I am joined by Chris Pedotti, who is our Homeland Security Unit Chief. And we will be talking to you about a couple of grant opportunities that we have at Vermont Emergency Management that will help, hopefully, your local community. So I'm going to start off, and we're going to talk about the Local Emergency Management and EOC Enhancement Grant. LEMEOCEG, if you want to acronymize it. It doesn't work well. Okay. Yeah, see, there's the acronym. It's horrible. I got to work on that. So, Local Emergency Management EOC Enhancement Grant. What is this? We have some funds that we get every year from the federal government. Those typically fund our operations at Vermont Emergency Management. We do have some funds. We have about $650,000 available right now that we are developing a sub-grant to make available to all of your communities. We're also opening it up to Regional Emergency Management Committees, the REMCs, so that you can apply as well. Again, $650,000 approximately, with a $50,000 maximum federal share, meaning that with a 50% match, your project could be $100,000. The 50% comes from FEMA, through us, and 50% locally. The funding source is EMPG 2020. EMPG is Emergency Management Performance Grant. That is, again, that federal grant that funds a lot of what we do. The application deadline will be October 20th. Yeah, or actually, I think it's the 22nd. It's a Friday. So we are targeting about a month from now that will be closing, and the period of performance will begin in November and go through August 31st, 2023. All right, so we have this money. You can apply for this money. What can you do with it? Because we get questions all the time. What's allowable? What can we do? How can we fund our operations? So one of the biggest things I get is from local municipalities, such as a lot of you. How can I get a generator? Where can I get a generator? If you want a generator, this is the grant for you. We're opening up to way more than generators, but we anticipate a lot of folks will ask for a generator for your EOC. This isn't for the firehouse. This isn't for the rescue squad. This is for your EOC. So permanent generators and the generator installation or portable generator and the building hookup for your EOC is an allowable project. IT equipment. So you need things including computers, tablets, projectors for your EOC. They're not terribly expensive typically, but if you don't have a budget, how do you fund it? Here's a grant for you. Situational awareness aids. You need maps, you need dry erase boards, you want different things to help you in your community. You can apply for them here. Communications, so base stations to support communications with state, local, or amateur radio partners. This is not portables. This is not stuff to put in a fire truck. This is for your EOC. If you're in a town office building and you have an EOC that's kind of in the corner and you really would benefit from a wall or a little bit of reconfiguration, maybe some electrical outlets or some HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, some reconfiguring, things like that. You can do that. We're not talking about building an addition here. We're not building you an EOC. But if you need to wall off something, if you need to open up a closet to expand it, if you need to add some outlets, we can do some of that. There's some caveats with any of the construction, generators, things like that. We'll talk about in a few minutes. Equipment for your EOC, AEDs for your EOC. This isn't to run around on the fire truck or the rescue squad. Electronic messaging boards, shelter cots, shelter supplies. If your EOC or your shelter needs equipment, you can apply for it here. Project funding, right here. Project funding, plan development. You need help writing plans for specific hazards. You can do that. More importantly, exercise design and conduct, training, acquisition, and hosting. If you have a specialized training that you need to bring in and it's going to cost some money, or you have an exercise you want to run, this is an opportunity to fund that. And this is great for REMCs. If they need help writing regional plans or conducting regional exercises, bringing in a consultant to work with you on that, that can be funded through this. Fix public alert and warning systems. So maybe you decide you need some help with public alert and warning. You need maybe some sirens for a target hazard. Those are things you can apply for under this grant. Shelter equipment and supplies necessary to run a local shelter. Generator for shelters is not something we have considered for this. Let me think about that. So equipment and supplies for a shelter, warming center, cooling center, things like that. You need cots, you need blankets. That's all allowable here. Well, I've told you all the good stuff that you can do. What can't you do? Because, well, there's limits. Construction of new facilities or additions. As I said, we're not building you an EOC. We'll help you reconfigure some existing space, but we're not building an EOC for you. Vehicles. No, you cannot have a trailer. No, you can't have an ATV. No, you can't have a side-by-side. As much fun as they are to drive around in a side-by-side, that is not an allowable thing here. Equipment to be used by first responders. So traffic cones, mobile and portable radios, pagers, sirens for a car or a PA, IT equipment for mobile use. Again, not allowable. This is for an EOC. This is for local emergency management. So that's why we're targeting that. Those sorts of equipment, the side-by-sides, the pagers, the portable radios, there are other funding streams available for those. So I told you we could buy you a computer. You may naturally say, oh, I'll get software with it. Be careful. We're not buying Disasterland or WebEOC for you. We have WebEOC at the state level. If you want WebEOC, we will train you on it. We'll let you use WebEOC, but we're not allowing people to go buy their own license for that. So user license fees, notification software, we have that available through the state, so we're not funding that with this. I did mention you could do some planning. One of the things that is ineligible are hazard mitigation plans. You may say, why? Why are you excluding hazard mitigation plans? Really, we're excluding hazard mitigation plans because there's another funding stream that covers it at way more than 50%. Because don't forget, this is 50%. So if you're contracting out a plan development for $2,000, 1,000 is coming from this grant, 1,000 is coming from your municipality. So that's why we're not funding hazard mitigation plans, because our other sources cover a lot more. So who is eligible to this? Or who's eligible to apply? REMCs. REMCs can certainly apply. We do want REMCs to have local emergency management plans adopted. The REMC really doesn't have much in the terms of qualifications, but we do want your towns to be active and participate. You have to vote on this, and you have to have your towns with adopted LEMPs. And I'm not going to require 100%. It's not feasible. I think statewide, this is an easy number to achieve. For a town to apply, you have to have an adopted LEMP. That's plain and simple. Also, the big one here is NIMS compliance. This has been a standard of any federal grant since federal grants started in the early 2000s. So that's the caveat here. This is in the grant guidance when it goes out. This paragraph came verbatim from there. But basically, you have to be in compliance with NIMS, National Incident Management System, as set forth in the state's implementation plan. That state implementation plan, is on our website. It was last updated in 2014. It is set to be revised in the next year or two, but for now we are using that, and that is linked here, vem.vermont.gov, programs, NIMS. If you are on our homepage, click the programs button and then NIMS, and it'll bring you right there. The plan is on there. So be in compliance with that. That means you are doing your LEMP, you're doing your resource inventory, you're training your people to those standards. So we've talked about what you can purchase, what you can't purchase. We've talked about who's eligible to apply. How do we evaluate? We get all these applications. We're going to be asked for a lot of money here. How do we evaluate it? So here's our evaluation criteria. Again, this is going to be part of the grant package when it goes out at the end of this week. So obviously put together your application, put together your cash advance policy, 3 quotes or justification why you couldn't get 3 quotes. Are you looking for a proprietary thing that only one person can do? I don't know. But really, we want you to have 3 quotes, memorandum of endorsement, procurement standards, certificate of insurance, copies of permits if you need permits, NIMS compliance, financial risk assessment, valid UEI, universal, what is that, UEI? That's the new DUNS number. I forget what the acronym means, but that is essentially what the new DUNS number is. You have to have a valid UEI and registration with SAM. Then in your application, do you qualify and quantify the need for this? What are you trying to achieve? Explain it to us. What is your project goal and objective? Again, explain it to us. Do you have a performance period, a project schedule? We are going to ask for updates as we go through this, especially if you're doing like a generator with this. We want to know upfront that you have a standard that you're going to achieve, and this isn't going to get pushed out 6 months or 12 months because we just don't have the funding going that far. Are you going to be able to deliver better services to your constituents, your citizens? As we review it, it sounds like you have a good plan, sounds like you're going forward, and you know what? You'll be able to meet the goals and the milestones. Down here, as a town, unique entity ID. Thank you, Harry. So down here for towns, we don't require it as a means to apply. But when you look at our ERAF standards, there are a number of criteria. Having a valid LEMP is one of them. The others, having an approved hazard mitigation plan, an adopted road or bridge standards, 2013 or later. I think 2019 is the latest one. And participating in the National Flood Insurance Program. Those are added things that help your town when there's a disaster. It helps you get more funding and reduces your costs in a disaster. We are asking that, or we are saying, if you have those, you're getting extra points here, a total of 5 points available. It's not much, but it's enough to say, hey, these towns are really proactive in doing things. So if your town doesn't have these, now's a great way to do it. Now's a great time. So a couple of things to note about this grant program. If you are doing any construction, that's interior construction and reconfiguration, HVAC, outlets. You're running an electrical line and you just need an outlet put in. If you're doing a generator, all of that is going to require environmental planning and historic preservation review. I have all the stuff. It'll all be on our website this week with the grant application. So you will need to fill those out. I would prefer that you do that now. If you're considering doing it, either anything that involves construction or building modifications, Do that at time you submit the application. Don't wait for the award. Start the process. Another big thing to note, I've talked about this is a 50% match. So if you're applying for a project, the total cost is $50,000, only $25,000 will be funded through this. So you cannot use up federal funds typically. That's called supplanting. Can't do it. They don't like you to do it. However, local ARPA funds, so the American Recovery Plan that came out, and all of our towns got a whole bunch of money, and now we're trying to figure out how to spend it. This is an opportunity for that. So if you don't have a local budget and trying to get even $500 is out of the question, typically tell your select board you can use ARPA funds or your governing body, whoever it is, because that's money that is not coming out of the town coffers. So how do we apply? Great question. I'm putting all the final documents together this week. The grant will be released by the end of this week. Pay attention to our website, vem.vermont.gov. There on the sidebar, there's a thing called funding opportunities. Click that, and that will take you right to all of our funding opportunities, including the local EOC and Emergency Management Enhancement Grant. So I have taken up about 17 minutes of your time. Questions? If anyone has questions about this grant, there are some things that are still being flushed out. I know I said it's being released this week. Just let us know. Feel free to get a hold of me. My contact info is on the screen, or you can ask questions in the chat. So I'll just pause for a minute and ask if there's any questions people want to discuss now before handing it over to Chris. So, question: if you're applying for a ham radio, do you need a ham radio license? In order to operate that ham radio, you need to have a license. While I am not limiting it to you have to have a license to apply for the radio, you should have a plan. You should have someone in your town that can come to your EOC to operate that ham radio. You need to have a plan to use that. We don't want to fund something then have it sit idle in a time of disaster. So apply for funding to pay attendees. We don't have provision set to pay people out of this, but you could incentivize. So providing food is something, but we don't have provisions for paying direct to people. All right. I think that is, if anyone has questions, again, my information is here on the screen. Please reach out to me. Okay. And I'm going to hand it over to our county facilities eligible, sheriff office as an EOC. That's a great question. If it is an EOC and the municipalities are actually going to use it or the REMC is sponsoring it, then that is allowable. But it can't be a sheriff's emergency operations center just for their use. It has to be municipal. And the municipality would have to apply. All right, Chris, you're on. Here, I'll let you sit here. There's the mouse. You can drive.
You're a good man, Rich.
Thank you.
And a tough act to follow. Get myself situated here. Right. All right. Well, once again, can everyone hear me? I think, Harry, another thumbs up if everything's good.
It's good. It's good.
All right. Thank you, sir. So again, my name is Chris Pedotti. I am the program chief for the Homeland Security Unit. So we work within Vermont Emergency Management. I have the pleasure of working with our overall team. And what we're going to do this morning is just kind of run through, and some of you may or may not be familiar with our programs. Today, I am specifically talking about the Homeland Security or State Homeland Security Grant Program. We do operate a couple of the programs, which may or may not be discussed later on in alternate presentations, but let's move forward. And so I'm going to try not to read verbatim off of this screen because I think that's just going to bore the heck out of people, more so than anything else. But there are a couple things I want to kind of get clear just about our overall mission. So I'll kind of read that a little bit more to the letter. So as you'll see on your screen, Vermont Homeland Security Unit's mission is to support federal, state, local, and private sectors' efforts to prevent, protect against, and prepare for threats and acts of terrorism against the state and its visitors. So basically, that is our mission focus, right? Terrorism preparedness. But also, there are other threats and hazards that may fall within our funding as well. But I always want to at least always start every presentation by saying terrorism is kind of our nuts and bolts as far as this program is concerned. That's what, when we have our application, which we may have some time to talk about in future slides, you will see that there will be places where we require that language to kind of be part of your application. We ask for that nexus of terrorism. On your right of your screen, you'll see just again my name and the rest of my team. At the end of the slide presentation, I'll provide you our email addresses and phone numbers and that sort of a thing. And you can always be free to contact us. So again, in my team, I have Matt Pritchard, Chance Payette, and Kaiser Luia is on our finance side of things. So again, the Homeland Security Grant Program. We oversee two programs kind of within the Homeland Security Grant Program, and one is basically the standard program that we'll talk about today, and we also oversee Operation Stone Garden, which is more of a law enforcement effort to support the Borders and Customs on the Canadian border. So we're not going to take a deep dive into that today, but just wanted to make everyone aware that that is another program under the Homeland Security Grant Program, and these programs are competitive. So eligible applicants, and this is another question we get quite often is, can I apply for your grant program? And the main focus of the Homeland Security Grant Program is that you must be a local unit of government. So on your screen, you'll see a little bit broader of a definition of what that really means. And again, counties, municipal government, cities, towns, townships, and it goes on to talk about special districts and councils of government, Indian tribes, etc. But again, without mentioning each and every one here, you can see that, again, we're talking about local units of government. And there are those times when we receive questions where some applicants just may not be clearly defined. So feel free to always contact us to let us know if you have a question in that regard, because sometimes we're happy to, after doing a little investigation, we can actually find out that you are considered a local unit of government, and you are able to apply in some cases. So that's something you can reach out to us for with further questions. So 80% of our funding is passed through to locals. There are times when we do retain some funding at the state, so above and beyond our 20%, which our 20% is more or less our operational cost to operate this grant. But above and beyond that, occasionally as a state, we will retain some funds with the cooperation and consent of local units of government. So sometimes we'll basically have a project or we'll fund equipment that may go to a state entity with the overall benefit of local units of government. And that applies a lot, especially in a small state such as ours. We do see that quite often. And what can you apply for? So I will say, just in general, and we have our little acronym here as well, POETI elements, but really that stands for planning costs, organization costs, equipment costs, training, and exercising. Now we do see some possibly in all of those categories, but we are very much equipment heavy, if you will, in our grant. Not to say that always has to be the case. I think that's just traditionally how it has been applied. So again, if you have a question about any one of these type of categories, or maybe something that even may fall slightly outside of them, again, you could always let us know, and we'll be glad to kind of steer you in the right direction. But this gives you at least a general idea of what you can apply for under the grant. And I apologize if that's small. It's probably very small for me to see. Basically, just to give you an idea of how this, how the grant works and how we try to come up with prioritization of projects. So each year we have a risk assessment process, if you will, that the state conducts. And here you'll see again another acronym, threat and hazard identification and risk assessment. And you'll also see at the bottom of the screen the SPR, so this stakeholder preparedness review, or the state preparedness review. So this is a process that we go through every year. We're going to be actually getting involved with this process next month, is our THIRA SPR here in the state. And during that, we're going to get together a bunch of subject matter experts and from local and state government and federal government, and basically just try to see where our gaps lie in the state and how we could potentially address those gaps. And we utilize this to hopefully identify the best funding strategies for the state. And because we feel when you get everybody in a room, put our heads together, we're able to identify what is, again, what's best for the state. And it's not, hopefully, any one person's opinion. Although we do get a lot of those as well. So make sure I hit the right slide here. Okay. And I don't know why, but I think this slide is not coming exactly the way I want it to come out. Seems to be thinking. But I'll just kind of give it to you off the top of my head. So in 2020, FEMA came out with national priority areas, and under the state Homeland Security Grant Program. And really what that meant was we now became required to spend so much of our funding within specific categories in order to be eligible for this funding. So that has changed somewhat from 2020 to present. So some of those priorities have stayed the same. Some have changed somewhat. In 2022, we see that there are national priority areas that are covering a few different things. We have cybersecurity and election security. We have soft targets, crowded spaces. We have information and intelligence sharing. And we also have a new category this year of community preparedness and resilience. So within our national priority areas this year, we have to spend a minimum of 30% of our funding toward those initiatives, and 12% of that is on these targeted areas that we just discussed. And so the reason I mention that is for a variety of reasons. One is because it's important. It's one of those things that, again, if we don't meet these minimums, we could potentially lose some funds, funds that will go unspent. And we certainly don't want to do that. We want to have as much of our funding spent as possible for the betterment of the state. So when we put on our RFPs, and we'll talk about that as to when that happens, when we request for project proposals, we target these national priority areas within the RFP. And what we're telling applicants is you can apply for anything that's allowable under the program, but if you apply within these national priority areas, you will be potentially scored higher for those national priority areas. So that's why we definitely want to get as many projects as possible within those areas, because again, the federal government has determined that these nationwide are an important aspect of the funding. So in our state, and not every state is the same on how we get these funds out, but typically how we do it here in Vermont through the Homeland Security Unit is right around mid-January, we release a request for proposal out to the state. And again, we ask applicants to apply for projects that are allowable. That's local units of government, for items that are allowable under the program. And we typically close that request for proposal somewhere at the end of February, sometimes early March. And then we'll go through application review and scoring and prioritization, and we'll have meetings with our working groups and our leadership team, et cetera. And if all goes well, we will submit those projects to FEMA for their approval and insight as well. And then in the fall, if those projects are approved, applicants would receive their funding for those projects. These are 3-year grants. So as you can imagine, we always have overlapping grant cycles. So this is this is a good thing in a sense that, for example, our next opportunity will be coming up in January, right around mid-January, as I mentioned. But there also could be opportunities that come up inadvertently if there's residual funding left over from a previous year. So maybe a project went underspent or just didn't happen for whatever reason. And we ran into some of these issues with the whole advent of COVID and all of that sort of a thing. So these things do happen. So occasionally we also will release an RFP outside of our normal cycle. And sometimes it's a targeted RFP where we'll be looking for specific projects, or sometimes, again, it's a general and broad RFP under the State Homeland Security Grant Program, where you can apply anything that's allowable under the program. So always want to keep your eyes open for those things as well. Okay, I'm just going to get into briefly, because we have a little bit of time, talk about what the application kind of looks like. And I'm not going to get into the weeds here because, quite frankly, if applicants are really plan on applying, and we encourage that, we as a team do our best to offer educational opportunities to everyone out there as well. So we could do group webinars. We could, of course, refer you to our website at hsu.vermont.gov, where we also have some materials that live within our website, some webinars that give you a good broad overview of basically what I'm talking about today, and also how to get into the nuts and bolts of filling out your application. But we'll get into a little bit of that now. If I don't mess up this slideshow. Okay. Again, I'm not going to read everything on this screen, but when you look through the RFP, when that comes out, you're going to see different types of requirements, and you'll probably notice midway down on this slide it talks about the DUNS number, but again, as Rich pointed out, it's no longer a DUNS number, it's a UEI number. Similar type of a concept, but just keep that in mind. And these are just some of the things that you would have to be cognizant of and aware of, that you would have to have available when applying for our funding. And again, a lot of this stuff you're going to see on our website as well. So submission requirements, we have an Excel application format. That application has remained pretty similar, if not the same, over the last several years. It could certainly change in the future, but for the time being, it is still that Excel type format where we run you through a body of questions, and to make sure that you're properly describing your project, that it meets that nexus of terrorism that we're looking for, and also that you're supplying some other needed information. And one thing that comes to mind is equipment, and we get this a lot. So if you apply for equipment that's over $100, you're going to require equipment quotes. And those quotes, of course, can look like a lot of different things. They can be taken from a website. It could be that you're contacting a business directly and getting it from them. It's not very restrictive in how you get those quotes, but we do require them. And the main reason for the quotes are to ensure that your projects are reasonably priced. That's what we're really looking for. That is not something that's above and beyond what is normal or standard practice. And you'll see things like a property records list. If you're applying for something for a vehicle, we need to see a vehicle roster. You're applying for equipment for personnel, we would need to see a personnel roster. So I think you get the the idea there that everything kind of has to have a corresponding document that kind of explains how you're going to use it and why you would potentially need it. What I will say is, like any grant program, federal grant program or otherwise, there are some steps to go through. I won't say hoops to jump through, but I will say some steps. And I think they can be daunting at times for people that are unfamiliar with the process. And that's why we try to take some of the mystery out of it through webinars, through education, etc. And we want to continue to make that available for our applicants, because we never want to get into a situation where people are not applying just because of anxiety or fear of the process. I think that's the biggest tragedy that you can see. So we try to avoid that as much as possible. And here on your screen, you just see just an excerpt from what our hsu.vermont website looks like. It's different categories of the different granting programs, frequently asked questions, and these are all drop-down menus. So when you hit these boxes on our website, it's going to take you down to the necessary forms that you'll need to apply, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm pretty much just going to breeze through the rest of the slides. I know we're running down to the end. And all of this stuff that I'm giving you right now, again, is available on our website. This is just, again, a look at our RFP and what that typically looks like, of how typically the application will look like, the Excel format. Again, when we talk about, the screen's going a little bit nuts, but when we talk about, again, quotes, where you might go to see quotes, you can go on Google, you can check out things from there. You can, again, go to your a local business. Really doesn't make a difference of how you do it. It's just a matter of having those things available for your project. And the main thing at the end of the day is that you're submitting a complete grant application, right? So you want to meet all those little widgets and criteria that I mentioned earlier. And we don't believe in leaving anybody out in the weeds by themselves or in the woods. If you have questions, if applicants have questions during the application process, the best thing to do is to reach out to us. At the last slide I'm going to come up on here, I have, again, all of our contact information of the whole team, and also a general mailbox that we all have access to, which is sometimes the best way to get us, because it puts all of our eyes on it and our focus on your question. And you even see it here up on the screen, dps.hsugrants@vermont.gov. And just some key takeaways. Again, you must be a local unit of government to apply for the Homeland Security Grant Program. We went over the January timeframe as to when typically we're releasing our RFP for these funds. Equipment requests must be, and we didn't get into this in crazy detail in these slides, but it must be on the FEMA authorized equipment list. So all items of equipment that you order must come off of that list. FEMA AEL, if you do a Google search, it'll come up, or FEMA authorized equipment list. You can start taking a peek at that. It is a very, it's a very large document to download. And it's not a great fun to look at, but it'll give you an idea of some of the allowable things, or all of the allowable things that are within our program. There is that potential for dual use of funds. Again, we are focused on terrorism preparedness, but sometimes those same pieces of equipment and training can also serve other threats and hazards as well. And when considering terrorism, again, go back to those national priorities. Take a broader look as to not only what's happening in this state, but also around the country, around the world, so that you can really build out a perspective of what is that terrorism threat. And that's another big question that we receive all the time. I think as a small state, and knock on wood, as a relatively safe state, sometimes people have a hard time thinking outside of that box of, well, how does terrorism apply here in the state? And you have to go into it with the thought and understanding that, unfortunately, terrorism can happen anywhere, and we have to keep our eyes open, and we should be applying for projects to prevent that from happening here. And again, it is a competitive grant program. And again, as I promised or threatened, here is our contact information of myself, Chris Pedotti, Matt Pritchard, Chance Payette. A great team. Everybody is incredibly caring about this program and the other programs that we operate. And you'll see at the top of the screen is our dps.hsugrants@vermont.gov. That's our overall general email inbox, and we'd be glad to answer any questions you have through that box, or I'll even take a few minutes now if anyone does have some last-minute questions. Planning costs could be eligible under certain circumstances. I think, like anything else, I would want to know a little bit more about the organization and that sort of a thing. But that could definitely be a possibility.
I think it's worth noting, and hopefully folks can hear me. This is Rich Cogliano.
Rich is right here.
If you're talking about COOP plans and development of COOP and bringing people in, if it's a municipality, then that is certainly eligible under the local EM and EOC enhancement grant that I spoke of a little bit ago.
And it's a great question, things like that, because you will find that although our grant programs are very different in many ways, there are certain things that you could potentially apply for under both of these programs, right? And we go back to even that generator thing. Technically speaking, you could apply for a generator through the Homeland Security Grant Program that has been funded before. And there are other opportunities, as Rich said, as well. Any other questions before we wrap up here?
Christian, we had a question in the room about can RPCs apply?
Yes. Yeah, and again, it's all about meeting that local unit of government definition. If they are a body of government in legislation, more than likely they would be able to meet that. And I see something that says municipal towns. Obviously, municipal towns can and do apply for this grant. Did that answer your question, Harry, or in the room?
Yes, thank you.
All right, excellent. Well, again, knowing that we are up against our break time, and I don't want to stand in the way of coffee and such, I'll end it there. But Rich and I both want to thank you for your time, and we really would want to see your grant applications come through. And if anyone who is here at the conference, feel free to run by our booth over here, whether it be Vermont Emergency Management or the Homeland Security Unit. We'd be glad to give you some pamphlets and such on the programs, and we can talk to you a little bit more about them as well. So thank you again. Have a great day, everyone.